Yes or no question, just going down the line, starting with Mr. Banks.
Yes.
Can we fight against anti-Semitism and other forms of hate simultaneously? Yes or no?
Not only can we must.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Of course.
Yes. So it's really important because there's also been reports in the rise in Islamophobia in New York City schools and across the country. Do you all agree with that? Yes or no?
Yes.
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 Yes. Does sexism still exist in our society?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Of course.
Yes.
Does anti-black racism still exist in our society?
Absolutely.
Yes.
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 We must fight hate in all its forms at the same time. I have members of Congress talking about teachers teaching hate. None of them have an education background, by the way. They're talking about teachers teaching hate. I work in Congress. When you go in the rotunda and you look at American history, you see colonists coming in and taking over America from the Native Americans. There is no reference to the black people who built this country in our rotunda. But we're scolding you about teaching hate. You know how many black statues there are in the Capitol? 3. You know how many Confederate statues there are in the Capitol? 12.
In this video, we're looking into the House committee hearing that was focused on a very important issue, confronting the rise of anti-Semitism in K-12 schools. This hearing was all about addressing how dangerous and hateful ideologies have started making their way into schools and the impact it's having on students, particularly Jewish students. The Democrats came together during this hearing to call for stronger action, focusing on creating safer learning environments where no child should ever feel targeted because of their faith. This isn't just about one group. It's about standing up against all forms of hatred and ensuring that our schools remain a place of learning, respect, and inclusivity. Representative Burgess Owens pointed out the dangers of kids being taught hate in schools. He made it clear that no child should be exposed to any form of hateful ideology, whether it's anti-Semitism or any other kind of prejudice. Owens highlighted that teaching kids to hate divides communities and creates long-term harm. He stressed the importance of ensuring that schools are places of learning, where students are taught values like respect and empathy, rather than division and hostility.
It's one thing to hear about the bigoted behavior present on today's college campuses. It's utterly appalling to hear the activist teachers that are doing the same in our classrooms, spreading the vitriol of hate to our children in classrooms throughout our nation. Unfortunately, and all too often, these carriers of hate are teachers and school administrators. And this is going down to our kids that's supposed to be teaching. Children as young as 2nd grade are being taught to hate Jews. Question is, how did this come about? Mr. Banks, I have a quick question.
Sure.
In the press release shortly after the events of Hillcrest High School, where students stormed the building demanding a teacher's resignation and attempted to enter the teacher's room, where she hid, you said, this notion that this place, these kids are radicalized and anti-Semitic is the height of irresponsibility. Do you think that these kids were not radicalized? Do you stand by that statement?
First of all, let me say this. Hillcrest High School is the school that I graduated from, so that school is very personal
no.
to
I'm
me.
sorry, I only have a few minutes.
Right.
This statement, do you still stand by this statement?
My statement at that time was that, yes, I stand by that statement. The entire school was not radicalized. Yes.
All right, so if this was a black teacher, and these were kids coming in because of her skin, because of her background, hiding out for 2 hours in a classroom, these are high school kids.
I know that.
Would you still say that this is not radicalized? There's something wrong with this?
Those kids engaged, the kids who were responsible, who led that effort, engaged clearly in an act of anti-Semitism.
Okay, so I'm really,
and I dealt with that and responded to it.
My question is, if this is a black teacher being threatened and pushed by some white bigots, would you still say that these kids are not a problem that's not being radicalized by hatred?
If it was a black teacher that was being targeted, absolutely unacceptable, and this was unacceptable.
Okay,
we
so
absolutely took action, including removing the principal of the school.
I'm sorry. Were there any consequences? I mean, I'm hearing nice words, really nice words here. Teaching, redirecting, directing. What I'm missing is discipline, and I'm missing the word fired. Has anything happened to these kids that did this to this teacher's hiding out for 2 hours?
Well, I'm not sure if you heard clearly from what I said. What I said was very clear. We suspended a number of students who were the leaders at Hillcrest High School, number one. Number two, we removed the principal of that school for a lack of leadership and oversight. I don't know how to make it much clearer.
Okay.
I condemn clearly what happened at Hillcrest was a complete act of anti-Semitism. It will not stand on my watch. We responded,
Okay.
and I don't know how to make it any clearer,
No,
sir.
thank you so much. I'm glad to hear somebody was fired in that. Was the principal fired or just transferred to another school?
The principal was removed from the school.
Was he taken to another school or was he
He's
fired?
not in another school. No, he's not in front of any more children.
Okay. Ms. Marthel, the Brandeis Center has reported at most misguided administrators have attempted to resolve problems involving teachers by moving students, Jewish students and Israeli students into new classes. As a result, antisemitism is normalized. Quick question, how does this work? So you find teachers that are bigots, and instead of firing them, you transfer them to another school where they can still remain bigots? Is that the way this works?
I'm a little confused by the question. You started with students being moved, and then you went to teachers being moved. I'll tell you that it's not something that we normalize. It's not something that we agree with, and we take action every time there's any concern or complaint.
I'm just trying to understand how this works. When you have teachers that are teaching hate to our kids and showing it, and our students are feeling fearful for this, are they fired or do they just transfer to another school? It appears that they're just moving to another place. In this case here, I guess that's the question I have. How is this being resolved?
If we have a concern or a complaint about anti-Semitism or any form of hate, we take it very seriously, we investigate, and we take action pending the outcome of that investigation.
Okay, all right, so I guess the action is not firing, it's just moving them someplace. The word of action is very subjective, obviously. Mr. Silvestri, real quickly, there's been several complaints filed by the Department of Education of Civil Rights. And again, what resulted in one administrative leave and the three others merely being transferred. I'm going to ask you the same questions. How is this working out? Or do we have a process in which you can actually get bad teachers out of the classroom, bad administrators that are teaching our kids to hate like this? Are we addressing that at all?
In all of those cases, the teachers were put on leave so that we could do a thorough investigation. Disciplinary action was taken.
I guess I'm just concerned. We want results. We want discipline. We see what's happening to our kids, and we've not taken out the cancer, which is these teachers coming in, administrators that's pushing down their hate. Every day in these classrooms is a bad day for our kids. So are we getting rid of any of these people? Or just taking action, other actions?
Disciplinary action has been taken on all of those cases.
Okay,
and
but they're not being fired.
They understand any other further action will lead to up to determination.
Representative Lisa McClain spoke about the importance of protecting children from anti-Semitism and all forms of hate in schools. She highlighted the responsibility educators and lawmakers have in ensuring that schools remain safe spaces for all students.
Mr. Sykes, therein lies the problem. Your ability to tolerate this behavior is completely unacceptable. And sometimes you do need to use the stick because disincentives work. So with that, I was just appalled by that answer. But at any rate, Mr. Banks, I appreciate your passion. I love it. It is so refreshing to see. I'm going to ask a couple questions. I think they're really simple. But then I want to move to outcomes and what we can do to actually make change, because I think you said something very insightful. We need to get to the root of the problem and change the curriculum and change how we teach, right? So I'm assuming you're going to agree with me, but let me just, death to Israel, is that anti-Semitic?
Of course it is.
Of course. Kill the Jews, anti-Semitic?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Drawing swastikas or mimicking, is that anti-Semitic?
Absolutely.
I mean,
hate crime in New York, yes.
Of course. All of these activities are anti-Semitic. Vandalism of school property, right? Rioting, we agree on that, right? And we talk about taking action, right? And action is a vague term. So let's move from actions to outcomes, because sometimes when we take action, we don't get the desired outcome we appreciate or we want, sure. Right? So let's take a look at what actions you have taken and what has been the result of reducing the anti-Semitism in your schools?
Let me give you an example. An example of what was raised was Hillcrest High School, very passionately brought up. My alma mater that I went to, where a Jewish teacher was targeted in a frightening episode. We didn't accept that. We pushed back on that tremendously.
So can you give me an example of pushback? Because to me, pushback is that those people are dealt with swiftly. But what's your definition of pushback?
But in terms of outcomes, what I meant was we suspended students, we removed the principal of the school, we engaged the Simon Wiesenthal Center for a deeper dive in education of those kids. The teacher who was targeted made a decision, I think one of the most heroic things I've ever heard, to actually come back. She could have gone to another school. She made a decision to say, if I'm going to change this.
You fired the people. You fired
we move people, absolutely. And the outcome is that what's happening at that school now has transformed in significant ways. We're not fully arrived. This is a work in progress.
I get it.
Let's start by everything everyone in this room, I believe, agrees to, and you've stated. Anti-Semitism is unacceptable. All students deserve to be free from hate and be safe to learn and thrive. We need to support all students who are being threatened on school campuses and stand against all forms of hate. Any student who feels unsafe or discriminated against deserves to have their case investigated, and the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights should take all credible claims seriously and investigate. Superintendent, I'm a neighbor. I represent a district just to the east of Berkeley. I used to own a business in Berkeley. Yeah. I love the atmosphere in Berkeley, the openness, but it does create certain frictions. Openness, I think you would agree. Is that happening right now? Is the Department of Education investigating civil rights complaints?
Yes, there is an open investigation now from the Office of Civil Rights for Berkeley Unified.
And you are cooperating with that fully, correct?
We are fully intending to cooperate. We just received a letter yesterday actually informing us officially of that complaint, and we do see it as an opportunity to reflect and grow and continue to move towards our mission and values.
And you and your board has done everything to reasonably stop a complaint from coming, and you believe that the process will show that?
We believe the process will show that.
Thank you.
Representative Kevin Kiley questioned the witness about the role schools play in either promoting or preventing anti-Semitism. He wanted to know what specific actions schools could take to better address and combat hate in the classroom.
Is it, Doctor, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble reading your last name, Ford. Yes, Ms. Ford. I don't think we got an answer to you as to whether there have been any professors terminated at your school for anti-Semitic words or conduct.
So the answer was that I'm not able to speak about personnel matters, but what I can say to you is we investigate every complaint and concern thoroughly and thoughtfully.
Sure, I'm not asking you to give us names or anything, but can you just tell us in general, has anyone been terminated?
In general, I can say to you that I can't speak about personnel matters, but I can tell you that we do follow up and we take action.
I'm pretty sure your colleague, Mr. Banks, gave us an answer, so you can.
And I respect and appreciate that, but I'm not going to be able to do that. I can let you know that, again, when any issue comes up, we investigate it, and pending the outcome of that investigation, we do take action. And those actions range.
Thank you. You gave us a statement in your testimony where you said that any suggestion or assertion that anti-Semitism is pervasive in BUSD, that is at your district, is false. However, the Brandeis Center and the Anti-Defamation League have, as we've mentioned, filed a complaint. And for the sake of brevity, I'll read from their release, summarizing what's in it. It says, incidents include students repeatedly hearing anti-Semitic comments in classrooms and hallways, such as kill the Jews, non-Jewish students asking Jewish students what their number is, referring to numbers tattooed on Jews during the Holocaust, and Jewish students being derided for their physical appearance and demonized as evil. Students have also had to endure anti-Semitic teacher rants in class activities, teacher-promoted walkouts and praise Hamas, and even a second-grade teacher leading a classroom activity where children were writing "Stop bombing babies" on sticky notes to display in the building. Jewish students report being worried about mob violence, including being jumped at school. Many have said they removed their Stars of David and no longer wear Jewish camp t-shirts, and that they are learning to keep their heads down, hide their Judaism, and move through their school days in fear. Some students have left the district due to pervasive bullying. Parents have repeatedly reported anti-Semitic incidents to the administration, but BUSD has done nothing to address, much less curtail, the hostile environment. The eruption of anti-Semitism in Berkeley's elementary and high schools is like nothing I've ever seen before, said Kenneth Marcus, chairman of the Brandeis Center and former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Education. And yet you testified today, any suggestion or assertion that anti-Semitism is pervasive in BUSD is false. So my question is, if you're not willing to acknowledge the problem, why can we be confident that it's being adequately addressed?
You can be confident that I am there in my schools every day, in the schools, in the classrooms with the babies, and I'm very clear that anti-Semitism, there have been incidents of anti-Semitism in Berkeley Unified School District. And every single time that we are aware of such an instance, we take action and we follow up and we take appropriate action at that.
Okay. Can I ask you about the Israel-Palestine curriculum that's been introduced in some classes in the wake of October 7th? Did you approve this curriculum?
So we do have a controversial policy that says if something is instigated or incited by our students, which was the case with this, that our teachers can respond. So yes, in response to both student interest and parent parent interest to discuss this in our classrooms, we did have a group of teachers who did try to create lessons to respond to the moment and engage our students in conversation.
So you approved it? You approved the curriculum?
Our teachers did create it, yes.
And so one of the slides in this curriculum said, for some Palestinians, from the river to the sea is a call for freedom and peace. It then cited as support a quote from Congresswoman Tlaib, who was censured by this body in a bipartisan vote. Do you think that's an appropriate thing to have on a slide for students?
What was on the slide again? Say it again, please.
It said, for some Palestinians, from the river to the sea is a call for freedom and peace. Do you think that's appropriate?
So we definitely believe that it's important to expose our students to a diversity of ideas and perspectives. And if it was presented as a perspective, I do think it's appropriate. You do? So you think, I think, is it any wonder, and you said earlier you thought this was anti-Semitic, and you put this on a slide in the classroom and then students go around the halls saying it. I don't think there's anything surprising about that. But I wanted to also ask you about the ethnic studies curriculum you have, because I think you contract with a group called the Liberated Ethnic Studies Consortium, is that right? Yes.
So this consortium, as I understand it, grew out of the initial working group to form California's model ethnic studies curriculum, and the original version of that was universally condemned as anti-Semitic. 14 members of the legislature, all Democrats, said it is difficult to fathom why the state of California would want to actively promote a narrative about Jews that echoes the propaganda of the Nazi regime. Even Gavin Newsom said the curriculum was offensive in so many ways it would never see the light of day. So it was revised, but this Liberated Ethnic Studies Consortium offers the original version of it. They split off from the group and said, we're going to stick with the original anti-Semitic version, and that's the version that you went out and decided to have in your classrooms. Is that right?
That is actually incorrect, Congressman. I thank you for the opportunity to clarify.
Okay, please.
So Berkeley Unified School District has not purchased any curriculum from Liberated Ethnic Studies Consortium. In fact, our ethnic studies curriculum is created in-house, if you will. We pride ourselves on having.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe I misheard you. I thought you said you contracted with the Liberated Ethnic Studies.
So we have Liberated Ethnic Studies as a thought partner. Our teachers and our staff and our community members actually create our curriculum. So we're not purchasing or buying any curriculum from Liberated Ethnic Studies.
I don't understand what the difference between a thought partner and working with them on curriculum is.
Oh, for sure, I can explain to you. So Liberated Ethnic Studies is one of two experts in the field of ethnic studies that Berkeley Unified School District evaluated to partner with. Our curriculum, our units that are being created, the ethnic studies units, are created by our educators in partnership with community members, et cetera.
Thank you very much. My time has expired, but I'll just say.
Representative Jamaal Bowman made it clear during the hearing that anti-Semitism is a serious issue that needs to be addressed. But he also stressed that all forms of hate, not just against Jewish people, are unacceptable. He called for a broader approach to education in schools, where students learn that any type of hate, whether it's racism, anti-Semitism, or any other prejudice, is wrong.
Thank you so much. Chancellor Banks, you didn't just roll out of bed and become chancellor, and your background is not only in school safety. You are also a classroom teacher, and you're also the founder of two highly regarded high schools, the School of Law, Government, and Justice in the Bronx, and the first all-male school in the Bronx as well, the Eagle Academy for Young Men. So I want you to speak to us briefly about the curriculum that is being implemented in New York City schools to address the issue of anti-Semitism and all hate. Please be as concise as possible, because I have at least two more questions to ask.
Sure. Thank you so much for the question. So number one, teaching about the Holocaust, first of all, is required by New York State law. It's important to note. We also cover the Holocaust in grades 8, 10, and 11 in our social studies curriculum, as well as in a range of our ELA classes, including literature like the Diary of Anne Frank, Night, and many other literary pieces. We're also now working on a Holocaust resource guide, which is going to be available this fall in collaboration with the Museum of Jewish heritage. But the thing that I think we're really super excited about is we are developing a very robust, comprehensive curriculum, new curriculum. It's going to be about a year before it's ready to go. That is going to cover the entire range of Jewish history. Children need to understand deeply about the history of the Jewish people if we ultimately want to solve for this issue of anti-Semitism.
So I appreciate that, because that was going to be my suggestion, because Jewish history didn't start with the Holocaust. There's an entire history of persecution that our kids need to learn about. There's also a part of history where the Jewish people and Muslims and Christians live together in harmony in the Middle East and different parts of the world, and I want to suggest you teach that as part of the curriculum as well. Mr. Sykes, can you talk about the distinction between anti-Semitic speech and speech that expresses solidarity with Palestinians or criticisms of Israel? Why is it dangerous to conflate the two?
Thank you. The ACLU has spoken out against the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, not because we have any problem with anti-Semitism awareness, obviously, but because it incorporated a definition of anti-Semitism that includes criticism of Israel. And just as it is totally legitimate to criticize the U.S. government or U.S. government officials without necessarily casting aspersions on any particular individual, the government of Israel is certainly subject to criticism just like all others. Where that goes into ethnic-based hatred or targeting of particular individuals, obviously schools and communities can and should respond. But the right to dissent against our government and against others is core to free speech.
Thank you so much. And I just have a closing comment to make. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for your testimony, and thank you for your clarity around when you identify anti-Semitism, you respond swiftly and decisively because it needs to be condemned and it needs to be handled accordingly. So I appreciate you all for being here and sharing that with us. What I'm going to ask of you, because I've been very disturbed by some of the language that has come from the other side of the aisle, language around teaching hate. Our teachers in our schools are not teaching hate, the majority of them. When I say majority, I mean 99.9%. I'm a former educator in New York City schools. I have never seen that. Teachers make mistakes, and teachers need to be educated and disciplined when necessary when they do make those mistakes. Yes or no question, just going down the line, starting with Mr. Banks.
Yes.
Can we fight against anti-Semitism and other forms of hate simultaneously? Yes or no?
Not only can we must.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Of course.
Yes. So it's really important, because there's also been reports in the rise in Islamophobia in New York City schools and across the country. Do you all agree with that? Yes or no?
Yes.
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 Yes. Does sexism still exist in our society?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Of course.
Yes.
Does anti-black racism still exist in our society?
Absolutely.
Yes.
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 We must fight hate in all its forms at the same time. I have members of Congress talking about teachers teaching hate. None of them have an education background, by the way. They're talking about teachers teaching hate. I work in Congress. When you go in the rotunda and you look at American history, you see colonists coming in and taking over America from the Native Americans. There is no reference to the black people who built this country in our rotunda. But we're scolding you about teaching hate. You know how many black statues there are in the Capitol? 3. You know how many Confederate statues there are in the Capitol? 12. I work in an institution that teaches hate, and with our policy. Yet we're scolding you as educators who have been doing the, Secretary Hall, thank you. Yet we're scolding you as educators who have been doing an exemplary job fighting against hate in our schools. So thank you for your work. Please continue to educate us.
As we wrap up this video, it's clear that the House committee took a strong stance on confronting anti-Semitism in schools, which is absolutely important. But here's the question. This was a hearing about anti-Semitism. When are we going to see a bill that addresses hate crimes against us? It's time for that conversation too. Thank you for watching, and remember to stay woke. See you in the next one.